Welcome to the Democracy Reporters YouTube channel. In today's episode, we delve into a statement by Patrick Loch Otieno Lumumba, a former Kenyan Anti-Corruption Commission member, esteemed legal practitioner, and activist. Lumumba addresses the pervasive issue of corruption in Africa. Before we delve deeper, let's watch the video together, and I'll share my thoughts afterward.
African leader or one African government minister owns more than his entire village. And the tragedy is that that minister still goes to church on Sunday and says, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, and their will be done on earth." And he is the thief. African leaders tell us on a daily basis that we have improved the education situation in our country. Oh, but ask them to take their children to those schools. No, their children will go to the United States of America. Their children will go to Australia. Their children will go to France. Their children will go to Portugal. So it is you and me who are God-forsaken who take our children to schools which are local. Talk of low self-esteem. African leaders have also become hunters and gatherers. Our ancestors gathered wild fruits. In this country, they must have gathered those fruits in the Namib and the Kalahari Desert. In Kenya, they must have gathered them in the Chalbi Desert. But today, our leaders are in the business of gathering cars and buildings and many things. And yet I remember one great philosopher saying that there are people so poor in the world that the only thing they have is money. And there is no shortage of such individuals in Africa, people who engage in primitive accumulation. Our leaders have this habit of accumulating things. Shah Bedel Bokassa even had a bed of gold. But the tragedy is that when you have a bed of gold, even sleep will have deserted you. And what you must do is to take sleeping pills to sleep. But even then you cannot sleep. I'm submitting to us that the problem of Africa, as Chinua Achebe said, is simply and squarely a problem of leadership. That is the problem in Africa. And why do I say so? Experience has demonstrated without number that where the leadership is good and sound. Greg Mills, the great South African, advising Paul Kagame and writing after the event, says that the problem of Africa and the reason why Africans are poor is because their leaders have made that choice. He says that poverty is now optional, but the African leaders have made the choice that they are going to worship at the altar of the gods of poverty. And I'm submitting to us that experience has demonstrated that poverty can be dealt with. If you look at other civilizations, you remember at one time Turkey, which was then known as the Ottoman Empire, was called the sick man of Europe. When Atatürk came in Turkey, he became a dictator. And when he was asked, "Why have you become a dictator?" he said, "I've become a dictator that there may be no other dictator in Turkey, but that Turkey should rise up from the morass of poverty." And today, when you go to your supermarkets, you get things called Ramptons from Turkey. They even have Turkish schools in Africa. That is Turkey built and midwifed by Atatürk. Leadership is the solution. We are quick to point out Singapore. When Singapore was being forced out of their union with Malaysia, many an obituary was written about Singapore. It was said of Singapore that it would go nowhere. This backwater city-state. But when you recognize that when you marshal your people and lead them into some direction, then they will realize their potential. Today, Singapore has a per capita income of nearly 35,000 United States dollars, and it is properly distributed. It is properly distributed. But the problem of Africa, if you allow me to digress a little is that the per capita income in Africa doesn't begin to tell the story. The GDP of Africa doesn't begin to tell the story. Because one African leader or one African government minister owns more than his entire village. And the tragedy is that that minister still goes to church on Sunday and says, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, and their will be done on earth." And he is the thief of gigantic proportions, stealing on an industrial scale. I'm submitting to us that the problem of Africa is one of leadership. We have seen in Dubai, in the middle of a desert, each one of us who is a middle class here will have gone to Dubai, or your dream is that you go to Dubai or Abu Dhabi or Doha in Qatar. When you are leaving Windhoek to go to Europe and other places, you will take Qatar Airline, Etihad Airline, or the Emirates. These little Arab countries that have emerged, why are they doing so well? Leadership. It all falls on and rises on leadership. It all falls and rises on leadership. If you have bad leaders you only attained independence the other day, and it doesn't come as instant coffee, but you can borrow from countries such as Denmark, countries such as Norway, countries such as Finland, countries such as Sweden, countries such as Singapore, so that by the time you are talking about your vision 2030, Namibia could actually have 80% employment. It is achievable. And with the discipline that I've seen here in Windhoek, where you obey traffic lights, where you have no garbage in your street, it is achievable because discipline is part of the solution. You can achieve it. But Namibia is an exception to the rule. But that is not to say that the many things cannot happen. Many things can happen. I'm still talking about resources. Look at the Democratic Republic of Congo. Each one of us here has a mobile phone. And in each one of those mobile phones there is rare earth from the Democratic Republic of Congo. It is said that in the rivers of Congo we can generate enough power to light the entire Africa. The Democratic Republic of Congo has cobalt and gold and everything. And yet the Democratic Republic of Congo could not hold their elections last year because they have no money to hold elections. Even Somalia, after 18 years of trouble, could hold an election. The Democratic Republic of Congo cannot hold an election.
Corruption, a multifaceted problem, extends its influence across the globe, affecting numerous African nations. Despite the continent's wealth in resources and potential, corruption manifests in various forms, from misappropriation of public funds to nepotism and bribery. One of the most profound repercussions of corruption among African leaders is its adverse impact on development. Resources earmarked for infrastructure, healthcare improvements, and education often end up serving personal interests, perpetuating a cycle of poverty and underdevelopment for many African citizens. A significant hurdle in the fight against corruption is the lack of accountability. In numerous instances, those in power evade consequences for their actions due to weak or corrupt judicial systems, fostering a culture of impunity where corrupt individuals operate without fear of reprisal. Transparency emerges as a crucial element in combating corruption. African citizens, alongside the international community, must demand transparency in government operations. Civic engagement, including advocating for access to information, exerts pressure on leaders to be more accountable and transparent. Civil society organizations and whistleblowers play pivotal roles in exposing corruption, acting as watchdogs to hold leaders accountable. To strengthen these efforts, African nations should enact laws and protections for whistleblowers, ensuring their safety and encouraging more individuals to come forward with information about corrupt practices. In conclusion, it is imperative to acknowledge the existence of corruption among African leaders and recognize its far-reaching consequences. By demanding transparency, holding leaders accountable, and protecting whistleblowers, we can take significant steps toward addressing this issue. Our collective hope is that with sustained awareness and effort, we can work towards a future where African leaders prioritize the welfare of their citizens over personal gain.